again, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to League of Women Voters Dane County Forum as part of our Climate Crisis Series. My name is Carol Barford, and I am a member of the Climate Crisis Committee of League of Women Voters Dane County, and I'm also the host for our forum tonight. So very glad to get started. And before I introduce our guests and we begin with the content, I just want to make a couple of announcements. First of all, that this is the last forum of the 2021 fiscal year, or the League of Women Voters year. This is our last forum. It will be recorded. In fact, we're already being recorded, and it'll be posted on the League of Women Voters website and available via the League's YouTube channel within a few days. I also wanted to announce that the next event at the League is a summit on alternative voting systems, a study summit, and that's on June 3rd. So for anybody who's interested in alternative voting systems, I imagine you can find info about that on the League's website. So I am going to introduce our speakers one at a time right before they speak. But before that, it's incumbent on me to give a really quick and dirty introduction to the grid. So I'm just going to give this very brief overarching introduction, make sure we're all kind of on the same page. So, all right. So the grid, what is it? This is a really simple cartoon that outlines the basic elements of the grid. Over on the left there, you see that there's power generation, electricity generation that starts the electrons moving, it's transformed to the proper voltage for transmission. It can go long distance via transmission lines, and then the voltage is stepped back down before you have distribution lines for that last mile. It carries it to a house, a home, or a business where people are consuming electricity. And there are, as simple as this looks, there are a lot of things to consider here. It's a physical system in which electron flow has to be available whenever consumers flip a switch. So there's considerations of reliability, also considerations of safety. Utilities are responsible to their customers for both of those things. There are issues of cost. There are issues of right of way for all of the infrastructure that's delivering the electricity. So it's a very complicated system, even though right here it looks kind of simple. And one of the first, I need to find my cursor so I can, there we go. One of the first levels of complexity that pertains right on top of that simple grid system is that there's a market for electricity. It's not just going from one generation site through the transmission to a utility's customers. Utilities can buy and sell electricity, and that happens through ISOs, independent system operators that connect all of the smaller grids together. Here in the Midwest, it's MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operator. Famously, ERCOT of Texas got into hot water earlier this year with some of the ways that they run their electricity market there. But then, now we're thinking about newer pieces of the grid, newer elements. And in this cartoon is a smart grid, and you can see that electricity is not flowing just in one direction. It's going from different kinds of electricity generation out there on the periphery. You see solar power, solar panels, and a hydroelectric plant, et cetera, in through the transmission to all different kinds of loads. You also have a smart transport, smart houses that could be their own source if they've got solar panels, for instance, or windmills. So the power is going different sources, different loads, And all has to be managed by this grid management that you see in the middle. And in addition to the different flows, there's the intermittency of the flows with types of sources that are dependent on the wind or on the sun. So there are lots of layers of complexity here, and a lot of people are studying this and making big headway. So I am going to stop sharing, and I would like to now introduce our first guest participant, who is Scott Smith, Assistant Vice President of Business and Regulatory Strategy at MGE. Prior to joining MGE, Scott was Director of Regulatory Affairs at Alliant Energy and focused on the utilities, on Wisconsin-based utility, Wisconsin Power and Light, as well as MISO issues and FERC issues, which is Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for both Alliant Energy utilities. Before that, Scott was Chief of Staff for the Public Service Commission in Wisconsin, the state agency that's responsible for regulating Wisconsin's telecommunication, water, gas, and electric utilities. Prior to that, Scott was the commission's administrator for the Division of Water, Compliance, and Consumer Affairs, and he was also a former Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson's Deputy Communications Director and Deputy Director of the Wisconsin State Office in Washington, D.C. So that's a lot of varied experience. Welcome, Scott, and please tell us what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Carol. And I think that was a great introduction in terms of, what the grid is and kind of how it's changing. And it is really changing rapidly. We're seeing a lot of different resources coming in, a lot of new technologies that are coming in. They're really helping us clean up, the grid and not producing as much carbon as we have historically. If you think about Madison Gas and Electric, we have a long history in the Madison area. We've been the electric provider since the 1800s in this area. And throughout that time, we've used a number of different resources to generate that electricity. And historically we had a lot of coal in our mix, and coal was really, chosen because, as you talked about, the dispatchability. And really, when you're talking about a dispatchable resource, you're saying that you can turn that asset on or you can turn it off, depending upon how much energy is needed. And so, historically, we've used, dispatchable resources such as Blount Street Power Plant in downtown Madison was a historic coal plant that's transformed to gas. And today we use that just on really, really hot days or really, really cold days when we need that peaking energy. It's not the most efficient plant we have, but it still operates, and we want to keep that going to help reduce the cost for our customers. But since that time, we've transitioned to other plants. We've got natural gas plants, and then more recently we've transferred into, as you talked about, the wind and solar resources. A few years ago, back in 2015, MGE initiated its Energy 2030 plan. And in that plan, just short 6 years ago, we were talking about by 2030, we're going to have our carbon reductions reduced by 40%. Well, flash forward 6 years forward, and now we're saying, it's not 40%, it's going to be 65%. And you know what? In 2050, we are going to be carbon neutral. We are going to be net zero in terms of carbon emissions coming from our electric utility. And that's really changed because of technology. And what we've seen is advancements in wind technology. We built the Saratoga Wind Farm just a few short years ago in Saratoga, Iowa. And that wind farm is producing energy 51% of the time, which is remarkable if you think about it, where we aren't dispatching it. The wind is dispatching that, but it's dispatching 51% of the hours in a year. We're getting energy from that resource. Now, if you look at kind of some of our newer assets that we've recently approved, we've done both, kind of local scale solar projects. We've got the O'Brien Solar Farm in Fitchburg. We've got Maury Airport Solar at the airport in Middleton. We've got the Dane County Solar Project. And we're pursuing another solar project for the city of Madison and Madison Metropolitan School District over on the far east side, the Hermsdorf Farm project. We've got those projects that are really, in our distribution service territory, but then we've also got larger scale solar projects that we're participating in the Badger Hollow Solar Project in the Two Creeks, or if you're from the area, Two Creeks. That's a larger scale solar project. And what we've done there is we've partnered with other utilities so we can even get it bigger and get that scale, which brings the price down for all of the participants. More recently, we've filed with the commission for approval to participate in another solar project in Paris, Wisconsin, which is down near Kenosha, and also a solar project in Darien, Wisconsin. Now, the interesting thing about these two projects is we're pairing those with batteries. Okay, so not only are they a solar project, but what we're doing is we're trying to better utilize that interconnection point where that, on your first map of the grid, you have those transmission lines. Well, with solar, you're only producing energy about 25% of the time. Obviously, the sun doesn't shine all the time. And, cloudy day like today, we weren't getting all that much energy from solar. But what you can do during those times is you can have stored energy in batteries, and then you can release that energy in times when the grid is needing that energy. And so you better utilize that transmission interconnect. So, those are kind of these technologies that have helped us transfer from, where we were to where we're going. And I think, in a few short years, we're going to be surpassing even what we're thinking about in terms of carbon reductions today.
Sorry about that, muted. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
So our format is going to be to let all of our speakers speak before we go to questions. So if anybody has a question, you want to go ahead and put it in chat. We'll come back to it when we get all the way through. So our next speaker is Tom Myers, Director of Business Development at Slipstream. Tom's work focuses on assisting investor-owned utilities, municipalities, and co-ops, along with lenders, regulatory, and state agencies to reach their energy efficiency, regulatory, economic, and consumer service goals. Slipstream and its financial services division, EFS, creates, tests, delivers, and scales the next generation of energy efficiency and renewable energy programs that move us farther, faster, and easier toward clean energy economy. Slipstream partners with utilities, local and state governments, regulatory agencies, and other organizations to inspire new solutions to big energy challenges. With 39 years of experience demonstrating what's next in programs and technologies, Slipstream is an established and trusted trailblazer in the industry. So welcome, Tom. Please take it away.
Thanks, Carol. Hopefully I get the right screen here, and hopefully you don't hear my dog in the background. Let's see. Okay. Got the presentation up. Full screen. Let's see. Oops. I gotta go back. It's funny, we've been living virtual for so long and I'm still not great at this. Okay. Let me go back. All right, hold on. Turn it.
So we did see your slides there for a moment.
I had issues with this earlier today with screen 1 and screen 2. I apologize. Well, I think this might
No, there we go. Getting there.
Yeah.
Now we see this, the PowerPoint
Yeah,
file.
if I go to full screen, then it switches
Yeah.
to another. Am I in presentation mode? I don't, for some reason, screen 1 and screen 2 kind of acted up.
No, but it's big enough that if you wanted to proceed in the mode it's in, I think that would be,
Okay.
yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. And kind of interesting, you know, Scott talked about generation and distribution. And I'll share with you kind of what Slipstream does and how we advance clean energy and fair clean energy economies across the country. And one thing that I want to emphasize is the fact that to be able to scale clean generation, we still have to worry about the infrastructure that exists today. And so we manage a lot of programs around the country, financing and other implementation type programs that focus on the building stock that exists today and how we can reduce the amount of energy consumed so that to scale clean energy generation, we aren't overscaling and overspending. So I think that's a really key component. So, and man, this is really, okay. I apologize. But so what we do at Slipstream is we accelerate climate solutions for everyone. And that's a very clear mission statement of what we do. And we really work with our partners across the country, whether it's other implementers, utilities, state energy offices, or elsewhere, on meeting those challenges together. And so what do we focus on? Equity and affordability, emerging technologies and human factors. So, you know, as a 40-year implementer, we've really evolved in terms of what we deliver as an organization. We really want to focus on efficiency at scale. Obviously, clean energy is extremely important, but again, that efficiency is just as equal as a component. So if you think about, you know, even in your own personal property, if you were to put solar panels and storage to your property, I think it's just as important, or we do understand that it's just as important to be able to create the efficiencies within that residence prior to scaling or building that, that technology for clean energy. And the thing that I'll focus on here really is how do we bridge that gap? And that's financing for a low carbon future and eliminating those barriers to save energy and upgrades with affordable financing options. Just to give you a little idea as to kind of where we work in the country today. So we did start out, and I don't know if anybody's really familiar. So Slipstream is a merger of two organizations, two Madison-based companies, Seventh Wave and WEC, which was Wisconsin Energy Conservation. And we merged a little over 2 years ago, and we have quite an impact across the country. And so Slipstream delivers implementation projects, research and innovation, and some of the other type of solutions out there along with financing. And so you can see in this map here kind of where we integrate our services really around the country from coast to coast, and have been doing so for 40 years from the implementation side of things and 20 years from the financing side of things. So we are, from the financing perspective, we're a commercial PACE administrator. So that's property assessed clean energy. We are the administrator for the state of Wisconsin. We participate in Illinois. We recently were awarded Milwaukee. The city of Milwaukee is the commercial PACE administrator. And we participate in Virginia and Oklahoma as well. The majority of what we do, is unsecured financing. We do that primarily in the residential sector, but we've expanded that into commercial, multifamily, and small business. Those three new segments are pretty new to the organization, and I think they're pretty important as well. We've focused over the years, or a lot of the program dollars, I should say, and we only work in the regulated sponsored space. We do not do any market rate type programs, but that sponsored space had primarily worked in the residential segments in terms of the financing deliverables, and realized that there's a gap everywhere. And so to get projects completed, and I talk about a conversion ratio. So when there's an energy audit done on your property, whether it's commercial, small business, multifamily, residential, the conversion ratio is taking that information from the audit and the opportunity that exists, and then actually realizing that opportunity with a completed project. And where there's no financing, unfortunately, there's a pretty low conversion ratio. So that financing creates a big opportunity to bridge that gap. And so we've expanded from residential, picked up the new market segments. We deliver that in 2 different states today. And all together, we work in Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Michigan, California, and Maryland. Primarily, we work in New York with NYSERDA, which is a pretty successful, very, very long program and successful program in terms of financing. So kind of what's our value proposition? Like I said, there's this energy efficiency programs that exist out there. So MG&E runs programs through Focus on Energy, as you know, as do Alliant Energy, and all the utilities around the country. And so there's implementers that manage those programs from all of those different segments, from C&I to, you know, residential. And it could be direct installs with light bulbs. It could be really expansive with HVAC, and it could be integrated controls. You know, we're doing some pretty unique testing at Slipstream on some new products that are in the marketplace for the United States DOE, looking at integrated controls and you know, some other parts of bringing all the programs together. And you know, in that are these incentives, these contractors, all these different types of regulatory framework that exist in there. And we provide the financial services as well. And so what's unique about us, and I think kind of one of our really strong value propositions, is the fact that we understand the energy efficiency market and the program and the implementation. Now, there's market rate financing that exists today, but we don't just qualify an individual or a business. We actually qualify the individual, the business, and the project, and the measures, and the contractor that's completing the project. And so there's a lot of verification and there's a lot of regulation that goes around these projects, and it's done intentionally, and it's very useful in that we make for sure that there's consumer protection and that there's actual value to the projects that's being completed, that's being sponsored or subsidized. And so what we do is we integrate all of those components, from bringing the capital into the market, loan servicing, underwriting, originating those loans, and understanding the value of an efficiency program that has all those other components. So here's just a little snapshot of kind of a comprehensive approach. And I honestly took this from a presentation I just gave a client recently. But so we're really flexible in what we do and what we offer from a financing perspective. But we do have a lot of experience, 20 years in the space in terms of financing and income verification for subsidy programs. And so we have, I guess, kind of some recommended type of programs that we would like to see in the market because of their cost effectiveness and their efficiency and deliverability in the marketplace. So there are these buy down models with guarantees, or maybe you've heard terms of like loan loss reserve. But if you can affect the risk, the capital provider can reduce the cost of the capital, which is a pass through to the consumer, which is very beneficial, again, to getting that conversion ratio. So what we really try to do is increase the participation, increase the conversion ratio. And to do that, you have to have great terms, great rates, and an easy path for them to get a loan. And so what we do is really an unsecured consumer financing type of a program and a model. And that's in lieu of people choosing to maybe go to their local lender, getting a HELOC loan or some of those different options out there. So we've really understood what it takes to be effective in a deliverable and cost effective to the client, which is typically a utility. And so we try to bring the lowest cost of capital. We analyze the risk rate versus the risk premium. Again, that's what the loss could be compared to what the loss truly is. And if you're a capital provider, you're always going to put a risk premium on there because they're ultra conservative. And so if we can take that rate out, we really work with our client to bring the lowest cost to the consumer and actually to the client too, because they're typically using ratepayer dollars with a public benefit fund of some nature. And I think what's really interesting about the portfolios that we've managed over 2 years is we've seen a less than 2% default rate. And that's really remarkable. That is in comparison much, much better than credit cards. It's better than other consumer loans like education loans, automobile loans, and other asset classes. The energy efficiency, renewable energy consumer market is a really interesting kind of non-identified asset class that has got a lot of great history of low default risk. We do these branded direct bill. We can do an on bill. We can integrate our systems with the utility as well. We do a lot of work with the contractors. The contractors are really a great sales force for us because they're out there in the homes. They're doing the air sealing. They're doing the insulation. They're doing the HVAC upgrades. They're doing all of these other things that the consumer asks for. And so we really try to tool them up and make for sure they're ready. We have great technology platforms for ease of access and with loan origination systems and reporting to our clients. And we offer a really robust program administration as well. So what's the impact of our financing and what have we done over the last 20 years? Well, I'll tell you, over the 20 years ago, we actually created an opportunity to do low-income screening and verification for a subsidy program in NYSERDA. About 10 years ago, we started in the loan origination business. And really in the last 6 to 7 years, we've really ramped it up. And what did that mean? $715 million worth of loans that we've contributed to for energy efficiency and renewable projects around the country. I think that's pretty incredible. We're on the march to $1 billion. I think we'll be at $1 billion within a couple of years. We really accelerated this last year and closed nearly $100 million worth of loans between the projects and the programs that we run. But 64,000 consumers and businesses had the access to that capital. That's pretty impactful. And again, it's really about bridging that gap. If you think about incentive programs, you may have the opportunity, once the audit is done, to get a rebate, even if it's a 50-50 match. Say it's a $15,000 project and there's $7,500 worth of rebates out there. There's still a gap to come up with the $7,500 to complete the project. Believe it or not, that's not readily accessible to most people in the country these days. Pretty unfortunate, but it's a reality. And so these programs and products that we provide really do bridge that gap. And again, with the right rates and terms, it's very affordable. And you compound that with the savings that they can have from the upgrades. And it really does turn out to a nice cash flow opportunity for an individual. Give you a quick snapshot of an impact of a state. So we've worked in New Jersey since 2009. We've deployed over $150 million in New Jersey. New Jersey's small. I mean, it's populated, but it's small, and impacted over 23,000 homes. And we have a network today of over 150 contractors. So just think about that from a micro perspective, how impactful the financing really is in the energy space. So I will wrap it up with that and gladly take some questions later.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. I wish I'd known about Slipstream when I was insulating my house. But we'll come back to that. For now, I would like to introduce Jason McDuff, Vice President at Green Penny Bank. Jason has risen through the ranks of a national bank, but is now happy to be working closer to his values at Green Penny and living part-time at least, close to family in Iowa. He recently joined Green Penny after taking a break from career to travel. It was in Antarctica, South American Patagonia, Amazon, and Galapagos Islands, where he gained insight from environmental scientists and researchers on the effects of climate change. Sounds like an awesome time traveling. Jason says, it's clear the world needs real solutions to reduce and recapture carbon from the atmosphere now. And Jason came home committed to putting his financial services experience to use. Jason and Green Penny believe the importance of using your money as your voice for fiscal and environmental advocacy. So welcome, Jason.
Well, thank you so much, Carol, and to the League for having Green Penny here today on this really interesting panel. We're super excited to be in the space. In comparison and contrasting to your previous two panelists, Green Penny is relatively new in terms of the markets we're serving, but not new in terms of financing renewable energy. We come from Decorah, Iowa, very proudly so. Decorah is in the northeast part of Iowa. If you don't know where it is, it's a stone's throw away from the southern west tip of Wisconsin. So we go to La Crosse for shopping a lot and spend quite a bit of time in Wisconsin. And Decorah has we're very proud of this fact that Decorah has one of the highest solar adoption rates, renewable energy adoption rates of any community in the United States. In fact, a podcaster recently told us that he looked it up and we were second only to Honolulu, Hawaii in the per capita renewable energy adoption rate. And for us, it's mostly solar. So how did that happen? Well, it's a story of a committed group of citizens from different walks of life and indeed different political persuasions, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, maybe not so conservative, more liberal leaning, coming together nonetheless and tackling together what's a pretty difficult thing to do, which is a significant renewable energy adoption in a community. In fact, your third graphic, Carol, that looked at what a modern grid looks like, well, we think that's the Decorah of the future, and we're already very much on our way there. We've got a role to play for everybody, the utility provider, our governments, organizations like the Winneshiek Energy District, which we think is the first in the nation to be formed 10 years ago that the bank helped to build, that helps connect the dots for people and does energy audits and connects them to installers and answers questions in this complex space, and other concerned citizens from private industry, nonprofits, certainly the bank, and figure it out. How do we come together and build a modern infrastructure that looks like that? And we're very proud that we've built so much renewable energy here and solar energy here that Alliant, our utility provider, is installing a community battery facility to store all of the excess energy that Decorah and the surrounding communities are creating. So Green Penny was formed to try to help more communities across our four Midwestern states, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota, do the same thing. And it started really 20 years ago when the father of our current CEO, we come from a community bank. We're powered by Decorah Bank and Trust. And the father of our current CEO 20 years ago, before a lot of people were asking the question, how can they operate their own lives in a carbon neutral way, decided that that's what he wanted to do. And so he has a farm outside of our community. He's got a wind turbine on that farm. He's got solar panels, ground mount and roof mount. He geothermally heats the buildings. When he travels, he, like on a flight, he buys a carbon offset tag to offset the flight so he himself can say he operates carbon neutrally. And then of course that extends to how the bank operates. So our buildings are Energy Star certified. We've got LED lighting. We have solar panels on every square inch of our rooftops and ground mounted as well. We track employee commutes. We can track business travel. Not that there's been a lot of that during COVID, but we track it nonetheless. And at the end of the year, we buy carbon offset tags through our local energy districts so that we can say we operate carbon neutrally as well. So we're committed, as we like to say, to the business and the cause. We personally walk the walk and talk the talk. Most of the employees at Green Penny and Decor Bank have solar or some form of renewable energy in their among their personal assets. So we understand this. We've been doing it for 20 years. We've been financing this for a long time. I think a lot of the things that Tom just said about loss history and the importance of reasonable rates, we completely agree, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So what is Green Penny? Well, Green Penny is a virtual carbon neutral bank. Virtual does not mean impersonal. Virtual just means we don't have branches, but in our hearts, we are really community bankers. So what that means is we want to get to know you. We want to build relationships that hopefully last a lifetime. When you call 888-GPenny-0, you're going to meet Sarah and Lori and Kelly and Carissa and Mike and Lori and a number of Green Penny bankers who have been with the bank a long time, and we expect we're going to be here for a long time to come, and are great at building relationships, like so much of what we're doing these days through Zoom and virtual means. It means we've got a great digital platform too. So you're going to get a modern, very high-tech banking app that you come to expect at any bank anymore across the country. Great web digital offering. The ability to connect with us through chat bots and email, that's fine too if you prefer that. But if you want to pick up the phone and talk, 888-GPenny-0, and we're happy to do that. We find that it's important that we maintain a community bank type service because this stuff is complex. There's probably a lot of terms that I think your viewers have heard today that they've never heard before in their entire lives, right? And when you start to research renewable energy and solar and wind and what it might take, as you want to do the right thing, and you maybe you're motivated to do this for your home or your business or your nonprofit, there's just so much information out there to wade through, and how do you do it well, and what's going to make the most sense. And we don't have a cookie cutter approach to any of our projects. We really want to, if somebody wants to be handheld through it and have it to be highly personal and let one of our bankers help guide them through it, we're happy to do that. If they're really smart about this and they've done a lot of these and they just want to do things in a sort of self-driven way, that's fine too. But we want to be able to guide whatever approach makes sense. So we're virtual. Get to know us, go to our website and check us out, greenpenny.com. Hopefully you'll find it welcoming and realize that we want to be the best at digital, but also the best at personal. And second, carbon neutral. I talked about how the bank operates carbon neutrally. We think we're one of the only handful of banks that do this, although thankfully a lot more are making claims that they either already are operating this way or have plans to do so in the near future. That's great. We want more and more of us to operate that way. We think it's really important, and hopefully some of us that have led the way have helped pave a path for more of our competitors to follow suit. We think that's wonderful. And lastly, we're a bank, and we think this is really important for a couple of reasons, and maybe not totally well understood ones. A few things. Number one, banks have a relatively stable, low cost of funding. We get our funding from our depositors, and so that's we're not going out into sort of a secondary market and borrowing money or anything like that. And that means that we can keep our rates reasonable, and we're very motivated because we're committed to the business and the cause to make it so that the projects make economic sense for our borrowers. So if you're a residence and you're installing solar on your rooftop or near your home, you're a business, you're a nonprofit that has a mission, whether it's saving people's lives in hospitals or serving constituents in municipalities or educating people in school districts and universities, that's your mission. That's where your capital should be deployed. So how can a bank come in and help you use your capital for your mission, but let us provide the capital for your renewable energy adoption and make it so that the economics work? And essentially the economics need to work this way. Ideally, you can trade what you're doing today in any of these scenarios, and with any of these organizations I just talked about. Trade what you're doing today, which is an electrical payment to utility for non-renewable energy sourced mostly, although increasingly not, but mostly non-renewable energy sourced energy. Trade that utility payment for a financing payment. So you don't have to put any cash into a renewable energy loan, whether it's solar or something else. And you're gonna make that financing payment. In the case of Green Penny, we do our loans up to 12 years. Other lenders will do it longer. We won't, because we generally think 12 years is a good term for you to pay down that loan, swap your utility payment for a finance payment in the near term. Once you pay that loan off, you've got hopefully a relatively de minimis or very small hookup charge and maybe a little bit of a bill periodically that you're paying to utility. But other than that, you're not going to pay for energy for probably another 12 or 13 years. Solar panels these days are warranted for up to 25. And we think that's really important too for all those organizations and residences I just talked about. Imagine what you could do with that money. I mean, the average homeowner spends a couple $1,000s on utility payments. Multiply that by 10 plus years. That's some real meaningful things that you can do for your family, your business, your nonprofit, your community. So we want to help folks figure that out. And so we're very committed to being adaptable. And yes, we've got a standard program for residential, but our rates are low and our terms we think are good. And as I said, we're committed to making the economics work. And second, for more complex commercial, nonprofit, agricultural farm loans, we're going to be flexible and try to make the dynamics work. We have to remember there are a lot of different utilities that work in the 4 states that we cover. And so the utility costs are different. The net metering chart approaches are different. And if you're in this space and learning about it, we'll help explain what net metering is. So we have to be very flexible. And the good thing is that community banks can do that. The second thing about us that we think is unique is that all banks take their deposits and they from their customers, and they lend those deposits out to other customers at typically a higher rate, and they keep the difference. That's how they make money. But at Green Penny, our customers can know that their deposits are only going to be used to finance things that are beneficial to the environment. Right now, it's renewable energy and solar lending. We're not going to be financing the fossil fuel industry. We're not going to do things that are emitting carbon or doing things that are damaging to the planet. And for many of us, that aligns with our values, right? We work hard for the deposits that flow into our accounts every couple weeks from our paycheck, or the savings accounts we've piled up 3 years of hard work and other means. And so, do you really want your deposits to be with banks that are still financing to the fossil fuel industry or and other carbon emitting ways? Whereas at Green Penny, you can know that's not going to be the case, and you can use your money as your voice to drive change. If more and more customers, which that's already happening, more and more customers are awakening up to the fact that they should be doing business with a bank that aligns with their values, and other banks are going to take notice, and hopefully they're going to follow suit too. And as I mentioned before, you're going to get great service, a good digital platform, no monthly service fees on any of our accounts, free ATM fees worldwide. You're never going to pay an ATM fee ever. And hopefully a relationship that lasts a really long time with us that we both can enjoy for a long time. So, and I would say finally, as a community bank, we value service, we value flexibility, we value not approaching things in a cookie cutter way. And, whereas we became, I think, very successful serving the Decorah community, we also, some of our neighboring communities, we have branches in. And we've done very, very well here in this geographically confined space. The renewable energy industry, the renewable energy community in Iowa and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Illinois is not that dissimilar. It might be more geographically dispersed, but people know each other. You're building a relationship. 9 times out of 10, if you're doing a project with some installer in our 4 states, we've done either business with them, or we know who they are, or we know somebody who does. And it also means that, like good community banks, we're committed to being a leader in helping support the advancement of goals in our community. And again, in the case of renewable energy, that's renewable energy adoption. So what can we do to help with legislative issues, or partner with important organizations like the League, or in Wisconsin, Renew Wisconsin, who we're really big fans of and do a lot of work with. We want to be seen as leaders in the community and help. Obviously, we can help finance these things, but there are other things that banks can do that have been historically good for economic development and renewable energy development. So virtual carbon neutral bank, that's Green Penny. I look forward to taking your questions, and thanks again for having us.
All right. Thank you very much, Jason. And thanks much to all three of you for so much positive energy. In my day job, I'm a environmental scientist, sustainability especially, and the news is not always so happy. So it's great to hear the can do. So before I jump into addressing questions that are coming in from attendees, I was really interested to note both Scott and Jason talk about batteries. And until really recently, it seemed like, yes, the price of solar is dropping, but the problem is the batteries. How can we get storage? Storage is still expensive. Can you, Scott, and then Jason comment a little bit on if that's changing? How's that working?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. It is this, it's exploded in terms of price coming down. And it really is it's a price issue, right? And so, when we're looking at how can we provide our customers with the best product at the lowest cost, batteries, just a couple of years ago, we said, yeah, they're coming down the road, but we're not there yet. And today we are. And so it really is just kind of that price point has come down, very similar to solar. We saw solar coming down. Utilities weren't investing in it because it didn't make economic sense. Now it makes economic sense and we're investing in it. Same goes for batteries. That's kind of where we're at. It's just an economic choice that now it passes all of our tests.
Yeah, I think we're seeing something similar. I would say it's getting there for our customers in terms of what we've seen so far, which is really good news. And a couple different things to think about with batteries. Obviously, they store energy, and then they can release that energy that you've stored at peak time. So if during the day you've got a solar system that's supplying power to your rooftop or your ground mount, and then that battery is storing it at some peak hours where some utilities charge pretty high rates in the evenings when everybody's home, it can release that energy and then it can lower your peak hour. That's really important for lots of organizations. So that's one way that they help with economics. The other way is with stability. If you have a lot of intermittent power issues, I come from California, the state of rolling blackouts. And in my adult life, the last 20 years, there's been several years. It's rare, I guess I could say, that I've been through a year where there hasn't been some sort of rolling blackout, which is pretty remarkable. In the fifth largest economy in the world, you just don't have sustainable power where restaurants, lots of businesses close. Now, do they go and buy generators? Unfortunately, a lot of them have, but more and more of them, as the cost of batteries are coming down, are looking to battery solutions that can help them power for. They only last typically a few hours, but it can be pretty detrimental to a business and to a residence that's trying to, in the middle of August, have their air conditioning work, right? So if you've got intermittent issues, that's an issue. In the Midwest, we really have pretty stable. Thunderstorms will come through occasionally, but other than that, hopefully we don't, derecho storms are another category. So you really have to, do the costs work with how they can store energy and how they can help with sort of providing stable power, and it's getting there. We just had a borrower, for example, get a bid for battery plus solar, and the battery system was as much as the solar system was. And based on the factors, it just didn't quite make sense yet, but it's coming. We definitely know it's the solution. And with all of the commitments that the automobile industry's made, that others have made, Tesla, others, to home energy storage and big power provided by battery, it's a matter of time. It's not a question of if, it will come.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. So Tom, I wanted to ask you about energy efficiency, which I heard in another presenter on energy efficiency one time do the Rodney Dangerfield and say it just doesn't get any respect, among all these. That's awesome. Yeah, and I also use the analogy that maybe part of the reason for that is that energy efficiency is all chopped up into little bits. It's like pennies on the ground as opposed to a dollar bill, right? Can you comment on how does Slipstream approach that with people? That it's real money saved, it's real carbon saved, but that's not what people are always thinking about. So how does that work?
Right. Well, so if you think about the building envelope, like I talked about earlier, and so we do a lot of HVAC upgrades, and I know there's a comment in there about geothermal and some of these other type of technologies. But if we want the grid to be cleaner, like I stated earlier, you really have to scale back the consumption. And so how do you do that? You have a building envelope. So if you have an HVAC system and you're upgrading that, air conditioning, heating source, whatever source it is, and it's relatively inefficient and you're going to upgrade to a new efficiency model. If you have a sieve of an envelope of the building, it's really kind of irrelevant, right? And so energy saved is going to be energy wasted out the windows, out the doors, out the attic space. And so conservation is still really key. There's a lot of aging or overaged building stock in this country, around the world. So energy efficiency is still king. So the lowest cost to carbon reduction is energy efficiency. It still is today. It probably will be for quite some time. And the most cost-effective way to create and build those clean energy grids is energy efficiency. And so, if MG&E wants to go out and scale clean energy solar and storage and wind generation, they still have to rely on the fact that we're going to be conservative in our energy consumption and efficient. And so that's where the energy efficiency programs really come into play. And it really can go beyond just which is really fun to work for Slipstream and some of these research and innovation type ideas that we do the measures and verification on. But it can go beyond insulating your home, and it can go beyond the windows, and it can go beyond some of that stuff. From a commercial application, it can go from lighting controls to lighting controls that actually have, automated shades. I'm looking at my window, sorry. So shades that come down during peak times of light so that they can reduce the air conditioning or, increase, so there's all of these integrated controls, and they can actually be grid interactive too. And so there's just a whole plethora of opportunities to be able to make your existing building today peak efficient so that the generation and the distribution side of things is in check and cost effective.
All right, thank you very much. We have a lot of great questions in the Q&A, and I'm sorry we will not get to too many of them, but I'm going to do my best to get some in here. I guess a question for Scott: is MG&E including vehicle to grid type flows in its long-term plans?
We aren't right now. What we're doing in terms of vehicles, though, is we have a Charge at Home program, where if you sign up to our Charge at Home program, we will come out, we will install a charger for you, and you pay about $20 a month. And then what we're doing with that is kind of where Tom was going about the smart buildings. We're doing kind of a smart home in terms of your vehicle, and we can manage that charge. And what that does is that allows us to, if as Jason was talking about earlier, at 6 o'clock, everyone comes home and the price of electricity goes up. Well, if you plug in your car, but then you set it to, hey, I don't want it to charge until 9. And hey, in fact, all I need is a full charge by 6 a.m. Then MG&E, what we can do is we can manage that charge. And so we can use the lowest cost electricity to fill your vehicle. And so, at the end of the day, all that does is that helps save all customers money because we're avoiding that peak. Tom was kind of talking about, we want to become more efficient. There's kind of a couple things going on. We're greening our grid. We want to become more efficient, but we also want to electrify things, right? We want to electrify our transportation. And so how do we do all that, and keep costs down? And part of it is by better utilization of the grid. And if you think about it, Jason was talking about 6 o'clock, a lot of people are using it. Not a lot of people are using it at 4 a.m., right? And so if we can better utilize that 4 a.m. grid, then we can reduce the cost of our overall distribution system by better utilizing it. That same wire is coming into your house. It's not being used at 4 a.m. If we can use that to charge your vehicle, the overall cost of the system comes down. That's kind of where we're headed with some of this stuff, is the better utilization of the infrastructure.
Thank you. And yes, and I know that some of our attendees were interested in talking about new rulemaking from the federal government that's going to allow those savings to be marketized, bought and sold. So that is super exciting. And I think that the league is going to have some more information on that in the coming year. So I have another question that maybe would go to Jason. I'm not sure. Geothermal solutions have seen kind of not been as much in the news as solar and wind. In New England, a number of companies are providing options for individual homeowners by installing deep wells. Are these options available around here? Does Green Penny done any geothermal? What can you tell us?
Yes, we've just started, and the good news with geothermal is that the borrowing principles are very similar in that for particularly residential applications, there is a federal 26%, the same 26% tax refund opportunity exists for geothermal. There's some requirements that must be followed in terms of the quality of the equipment, but it works very much the same way. And we can do 100% financing of geothermal because of that. For commercial applications, it's a little bit more complicated. The tax incentives are a bit different than they are for solar, but we're still open to talking about those as well. Just to pile on what Scott said, it's going to be both that we're going to be doing in order to, it's going to be both electrifying things, electrifying our transportation, electrifying our heating. Geothermal is an example of that. Air source heat pumps is another example of that. There's microwave technology for heating that's also interesting, that is being kind of just rolled out in the UK, that might have good applications for the Midwest. But all of that's going to, those things are going to result in increases to our energy usage. So that puts pressure, and it gives us an opportunity to become more energy efficient. And then, as Scott said, use the grid more smartly. All of that's going to be the future. And one of the most important things, if not the most important thing we can do to reduce climate emissions, is to make our own homes and our buildings carbon neutral themselves. And that's going to mean renewable energy power and electrification of things and energy efficiency. It's that 1, 2, 3 punch. So at Green Penny, we want to be part of helping to finance all of that. We're piloting a green mortgages program now that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae already have, that banks can already do, where they'll finance 15% above the appraised value of the home for those energy efficient things that have been talked about. Also for putting in things like solar and electrified heat and the like. So there's a lot of programs out there now that are making this increasingly possible for all of us, and we just got to be aware of them and take advantage. And contact us if you have further questions, because we want to work with you.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm gonna lob a tougher one out there, I think, which is anybody have any comments on the possibility of third-party ownership of distributed resources in your wheelhouse, especially as pertains here in Wisconsin, where we have slightly different rules about third-party ownership.
Yeah.
Of for example, solar panels. you guys see any changes coming, and how would that influence your business?
Well, I certainly can take this, and others can add to it. In Iowa, in fact, the same parties in at least one of the cases in Wisconsin, Eagle Point Solar also brought a case in Iowa, and in Iowa, it's been clarified. Third-party ownership of solar. Solar is the most common use for it. For nonprofits, most typically is the law of the land in Iowa. And we made comment with the PWC in Wisconsin to say our experience has been that's enabled, and it's not the only way that nonprofits and organizations can get renewable. There's other models, but it's been a really win-win-win solution for a number of organizations. Upper Iowa University, we helped finance that one. Of course, Luther College, which is in Decorah, Iowa, we've worked on various renewable energy systems for them. I should not start naming these because I'll run out of time. Municipalities, and even in, this is where I like to say that this doesn't have to be a liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican issue. I mean, Iowa is not exactly a blue state, right? I mean, it's very purple, and in the communities that we come from that are around us, many of them are very, very red, and yet many of them have. I can name probably 5 that their municipalities, their sewer plants, most of the energy for their school districts come from solar, and a lot of that was done through third-party ownership, and it allows, the basics of it are these. It allows a nonprofit to use its capital for its mission, as I said earlier. A third-party investor comes in and actually owns the equipment that leases the land from the nonprofit. And the nonprofit pays at a fixed rate their utility costs, a known rate to the utility costs to that investor. And so it's until they eventually buy it and own the facility, the solar facility themselves, and then have, of course, pretty good power generation where they can deploy their costs to other things. A government agency in Iowa recently did a study of if all of our 99 counties did what several municipalities and school districts and universities have done in the state, what that would mean for increased teachers, increased city services, things that could go to the mission, right? So we think it's been a really important tool, and we said so to the PWC in Wisconsin, and we hope that they clarify. Minnesota's also got a similar kind of question mark on it, and we hope they clarify. We think it's a pretty important tool in the toolkit, and to do the kind of massive renewable energy adoption that we all need to do to achieve some of the goals that Scott outlined earlier. It's really going to take a lot of different solutions to make that happen, and this is one of them. It'd be a shame if we didn't have it available to Wisconsinites.
All right, thanks. Scott, you care to add anything?
Sure. Well, we're doing it a little bit different at MGE. We have our renewable energy rider, where we contract with a customer. We've done this with Dane County, and so basically we take the risk that the project doesn't perform, right? And so all of that risk and the operation and maintenance, we maintain that. The customer, Dane County, they didn't want to own and operate it. So we're owning and operating it for them, and then we're selling them the energy from that. And one different thing with our system is we're doing these on a larger scale, right? So that the project at the airport is 9 megawatts. The project at Maury Field is 5 megawatts. And in that project, we have the city of Middleton, we have the Middleton Cross Plains School District. They're buying a portion of the energy from that. And they've found, they're basically, they're paying a rate through us. But what they're also doing is they're paying distribution charges through us as well, which helps everybody else out from an equity standpoint. They aren't avoiding those charges. If you think back to that first graphic, all of those distribution lines, if customers have solar on their roof, we still have that distribution line to their house. But now if we aren't selling as much energy to them, they're not paying as much for that distribution wire to their house, And what happens is then, from an equity standpoint, that goes on to other customers. And so with our program, what we've been able to do is build at scale, have that price come down to that scale, and and keep the distribution costs with that customer. And it's actually, with that, it's even lower cost than it would be if you had it on your roof, just because it's a larger scale project.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Tom, any change to Slipstream if the Wisconsin rules are clarified?
Well, I know that Governor Evers is working on a new energy policy, and I think that's going to be something that's under consideration with the PSC moving forward. There's obviously been a pretty significant paradigm shift in the PSC and probably a little bit more progressive tone. And so I think and hope that there's some opportunity for some leases or third-party ownership of some PV. I don't know. I think that's in the works. But I think, and at the end of the day, all of these things come down to economics. And so as the cost of solar and storage and other types of renewable energies, the question about the geothermal, it really does come down to economics. We do a geothermal program in New York for NYSERDA. We typically have a little participation because it's expensive. And it's expensive, and the cost of natural gas is inexpensive. And so until there's a shift, and Scott mentioned very early on that technology and what we've seen in the last 5 years is nothing. I don't think anybody's ever seen it in a 5-year period in the history, or at least that I can think of in the history of mankind. Honestly, the technology, the affordability of technology, and some of the other incentives that exist today have really shifted how we're going to move forward in the clean energy economy. And that's just a spectacular thing. So that solar, that storage, the building grid integration, all of those things are really in our favor to move forward to a much cleaner economy, energy economy in the future. And then bridging that gap, financing it.
Right. Thank you all three very, very much. I'm sorry we've run a little bit over time. And I'm sorry to those who couldn't get their questions answered, but I'm very, very grateful for all three of you for coming out and sharing your experience and your expertise. So I don't know if we have little clap icons in this version of Zoom. I don't know, but let's give our appreciation. Yeah. So I think a couple people have raised hands. I'm not exactly sure how to. Are you guys willing to entertain raised hands for a moment?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure if I know how to find them.
Or is that the virtual clap? The one
Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. At any rate, we are at time. So I'll just remind everybody that the forum is taped, and it'll be available soon, sometime next week. And share it with your friends, and onward.
Thank you for having us all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, and please reach out with additional questions.